thank you CSR NGO Box for bringing back a very, very important subject to this summit again. We have a very strong panel today to deliberate upon this topic, and I am sure that we will try and address the subject in the most appropriate manner. However, threadbare discussions may not be possible, but like I said, we will try and take the discussions to its logical conclusion. We have 45 minutes for the session, and as per the instructions from the organizers, 5 minutes to each panelist is allocated to express their thoughts, and we will also save last 10 minutes for the Q&A sessions from the audience. When we see the development parameters of any country, particularly India, in today's context, there is no denying the fact that low skills perpetuate poverty and inequality. I was listening to Mr. Rohila also in his session, and he also mentioned a piece of livelihood in his discussions. And all of us saw that how the coronavirus disease, this pandemic, lockdown and physical distancing, caused not only a great amount of disruption in the education system and training, but also gave us the opportunity, particularly for going digital. And it is also a fact that in a remoter areas of the country, of our, in the rural part of India, where the digital penetration was low, we faced tremendous challenges as well. And I think everybody who are on the panel and listening to us will agree with us that for a developing nation like us, skill development is a top priority of every relevant stakeholder in the nation. And that is the only way, we can achieve the self-reliance. So with these thoughts, I will now open up the discussions and will go straight to Suresh. Suresh is a stalwart in this sector. We all know him, and his organization has done a tremendous work in the skill development. And so Suresh, if you can just tell us that, when we see the skill development ecosystem as a whole, what has changed really in the last 2 years? Over to you, Suresh.
Thank you, Samir, and all my fellow panelists here. So when you see that, last 2 years, first thing what we are all experiencing is about the COVID. The COVID lockdown, unlockdown, again lockdown, and just only at the moment we are about to start a regular normal life. And again we talk about Omicron, that is another variant is coming up, and kind of thing. This is the one external environment and factor which is influencing all of our actions on the ground. At the same time, the skilling space we're talking about. For last a few years, last 10 years or so kind of thing. So a lot of things are happening in, one is about reality sector and hospitality sector, or it is the construction sector, or ITS sector, or other more kind of traditional kind of skilling courses have been operating on the ground, and people are equipped and doing things. Now I can see that lot of changes. What one can see that, so what the COVID brought is that because of the COVID, one positive thing happened, that a lot of things are happening online or digital kind, either it is the education sector or health sector or finance sector or any other sectors, So people are moving the traditional physical mode to the online and digital or hybrid model. That is one thing happening. Second thing, and also there is innovation in products. For example, I say that there is a tailoring program used to be there, beautician course. Now it is because of the aspirations of the people enhanced, and also the products of the market is transformed and kind of thing. Because of these things, even the skill sector, whatever the curriculum we used to have in previous years, that curriculum has been transformed to the next level and kind of thing. That is the one change we can see that. And other than that also, we are talking about 21st century skills. Earlier used to be people talking about, if somebody need to have the soft skills, communication skills, which are enough apart from the core technical skills of the trade, which you are going to get exposed. Now we are talking about the 21st century skills, where it is not just only communication, about entire your personality and your problem solving approach, or it is your critical thinking, and those are the things. Again, in this space also, the curriculum has been transformed. So one is the product transformation, because of that curriculum transformation, and the physical mode to the digital mode, and online hybrid model, and also more kind of the e-commerce platforms are environment related, the new areas of operations, and like the green energy or waste management, or the e-commerce portals and kind of thing, cloud kind of thing. So many areas, the transformation is happening. Along with that, the vocational skills courses also being transformed, and this is the situation what we observed. When come to the what we have been doing as a foundation, of course we have been doing that basic electrician training program. Earlier days it is going on, we're scaling it up, the program, but the mode of delivery has been transformed, just not physically, but it also the hybrid model, and also engagement of the experts online in a more intensive manner. And apart from that, we also have the computer skills and the English program. These are the traditional programs, employment enhancement skills and competencies going on. So what new things we added it now here, like future skills. When I say future skills, there's a new education policy, which last year the government of India launched it, and it talks about how we can equip our school students, from class 6 onwards, they're making ready for the future. And after finishing the +2, when they're choosing the careers and point of view, this is one of the options, how they're ready for the society and industry and market and kind of things. Introducing the coding, that is one thing. At the same time, the Niti Aayog, this Planning Commission of India, which is having a mission, Atal Innovation. So as a part of this innovation mission, it is promoting the maker space, how the educators and the students can make use of the electronics and the mechanical tools, an example of the sensors, or Arduino, or Raspberry Pi, or the robotics, or the other design thinking process, So here is how the coding can help the moving the electronic and mechanical things, also tools. So one way at the education system, this new vocational skills is trying to promote, and also in the school level also from 9th onwards. So encouraging the education system across the country to design and launch the curriculum which is not there currently in the system, how they can bring in. At the same time, the Niti Aayog is promoting the future skills or STEM skills among the educators and students pan-India level. Today, as on today, 7,000 schools were identified and sanctioned. So as a part of this, aligning with these two programs, and what we do at the pan-India level, we work with the adult tinkering labs, across the country in 6 states, and training of the teachers at pan-India level. Apart from that, Coding for Girls is another program we have started from class 6 to class 12 students, and especially to bring the gender parity and giving them career choices. And the basic coding is the essential for any kind of future skills program, because of the as we're changing times. That is also we are doing that. And also we started, instead of the tailoring program, kind of fashion designing. That is the next model of the tailoring program, making the higher version of the curriculum and making them ready for the current situation. And a beauty and wellness program talking about. So these are the initiatives we started keeping in the pace of the developments happening in the society. So, one side is aligning the government flagship programs. Second thing is what market demands, and third thing is as an organization, how we are equipped to take the new direction. And also, as people talk about as a SRF Foundation, it is a implementing organization. And an organization itself also getting transformed. Normally, people say that as a being an NGO, an organization, you have the people from the social sector background, either social work or the humanities or this background. Today, we have around 30 engineers working with us, to work on the future skills program. It is a core program, like people from the electronics or mechatronics and computer science background, working in the development sector and promoting the future skills, being with the communities there on the ground. So that is how the organization is being transformed. Our programs have been transformed to fit to the current need and requirement. Down the line, 5-10 years time, what is going to be the future? So that is how we are taking it forward, Samir. I stop it here.
Yeah, thank you, Suresh. And what I have picked up is that, this product transformation which you mentioned and the digital transformation you mentioned, coding you mentioned, the future skills which will be required just because of these transformations. We have Manisha with us. So Manisha, you have, when I was discussing with you, you have done quite a bit of work in digital skills, which has been just mentioned by Suresh also. So, what are the gaps do you think which the digital skills have bridged in the COVID times? Can you quote some examples, real-time examples from your programs? You're on mute, Manisha.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Samir, and thank you, CSR Box, for the invitation. Absolutely, I think COVID was unprecedented, right? We were not prepared, and we have always been talking digital. I think the world has been talking digital for quite a long time. But I think it was COVID that sort of expedited speed of transformation significantly. Right, so we were pushed against the wall, and there were a whole bunch of learnings, and we saw the entire ecosystem actually being driven by digital. Now, Anudeep, as a foundation, we work using digital, and our whole mission is around transforming lives and bettering lives with the use of digital skills. So that's been our mission for the last 14 years, and we always, even prior to COVID, we deployed a blended model of learning. What was a blended model? Well, we have an LMS where we had content uploaded and students were expected to self-learn, and the self-learning sessions were interspersed with classroom-based instruction, and those centers were physical. Now, with COVID, of course, very clearly the classroom-based instruction stopped completely, and that moved to virtual. So there was a whole piece in terms of, is education effective virtually? And there were experiments. There was, we pushed into teacher training mode. How do you build capacities? Because there was enough resistance, even from the teacher community, about can you teach digitally? How can you teach, skills like whatever the courses that we run range from basic digital literacy to advanced programs in, say, coding or hardware networking, etc. So with training and capacity building, we were able to transform at least 70% of the course online. And we figured that in about 2 to 3 months post the lockdown, we were actually getting as much of engagement and as much of, the feedback levels pre-COVID and post-COVID virtually remain the same. So I think one of the things that we addressed is that yes, digital can be an effective tool for training. There is, of course, one shortcoming, which is the hands-on component that they all need to do. So that 30% practical was the only thing that we brought in students, and post the lockdown, we started bringing them in small groups to the centers to practice. We also created a hub and spoke model where we tied up with other institutions who had infrastructure. We allowed students to go wherever near their house to practice. Because travel was not possible, there was no public transportation, all of that. We realized that digitally, corporates had changed their hiring strategy. So everything was hiring, happening remotely. Here, even an interview giving skill had to be done digitally, right? Students had to be trained differently. There is a separate body language and a separate approach when you have a face-to-face instruction versus when you're sitting remotely and sitting for an interview. That was a skill that we had to build. So there were different components that we had to sort of integrate in enabling the continuity of education. We've seen how education got disrupted, especially schools with, extended periods of lockdown, teachers not having access, teachers not having the capabilities and basic digital skills to teach. That itself was a gap, and that we realized was one of the big gaps that we saw. And therefore, I think this whole need of digital skills now is so imperative. The second thing, I think COVID hit us and we saw this complete disruption of livelihoods for so many. Not everybody has a job which is possible to do virtually, right? Not everybody works in IT companies and BFSI organizations where they would set infrastructure and you get to work. But what we did see, we ran a program with, say, the micro nano entrepreneurs, people who are, small kirana shop owners or mobile store owners, or people who were selling, small garments. Their business was completely shut down. They were out of income. The programs that we ran were around digitizing their businesses. And how can you bring your small business online, right? So that you have access to e-commerce platform, you learn how to sort of market your whatever products you have online. And we started working with even hyper-local platforms. Not everybody can be part of an Amazon system because the very small entrepreneurs will not have the compliances. Like many of them don't have the, say, a GST registration. So working with hyper-local platforms, but ensuring how can they market on Facebook, how can they market on WhatsApp, how can they take use social media effectively in their own network to continue business. That enabled continuity of livelihoods. We've seen that, entrepreneurs actually increase their business post-COVID from the times pre-COVID because they've learned a new tool. Yeah. So customer acquisition and lower cost of running the business. That was what was seen. So there. Then we had this whole thing about, say, healthcare. In a time during COVID, how would people were scared to go to the hospitals. Doctors were not available for regular things. Everybody was, it was just COVID. There was a panic. And then this whole, you saw that medical facilities, and that sort of moved digital, digital to a large extent. So telemedicine, which was a hearsay, for many years, actually gained momentum. You had video doctor consultations happening. So we ran a program where we were working with, digitally literate youth who could sort of go and help enable connect between, say, a hospital and a doctor, or a telemed company which had a resource pool of doctors, and connect them to people who needed healthcare, interventions, but could not or would not be able to. So the elderly, for instance.
That's a good
digital during, in terms of what gaps. I think it's 360 degrees, whether it's access to education, access to employment opportunities, businesses, healthcare, financial transactions.
Yeah.
How much, you could now, if you look at it, the last 2 years, a Google Pay has become ubiquitous. The other day, I met a flower seller in front of a temple. And I said, oh, well, I don't have the cash to pay. She said, no, that's fine. You can pay using Google Pay. So that's the transformation. So digital really has broken barriers, and it is the pandemic which has enabled this, I think, this lightning speed of digital skills acquisition that's happening in different pockets of the country. So financial transactions, we had a case in, recently where we had one small, a pan seller in North Bengal, in one of the small, remotest of villages. And we ran this digital literacy program for her. And she for the first time in 2 years, she saw her son, who was a migrant laborer in Kerala. So with digital skills, she was able to use a video tool, maybe a Google Meet or whatever, to see her son for the first time.
Right.
So I think digital skills, in terms of the gaps that it has addressed, it's 360 degrees. We are seeing a very different transformation in the way we approach things, whether it's healthcare, whether it's how you buy groceries, whether how you sort of, like I said, interact with people, how you access educational opportunities, how do you access livelihood opportunities and skilling. We're seeing, we saw a rise in work from home opportunities in the last 2 years. So we place a lot of our students in corporates, in corporate jobs, and corporates change the way they work.
Yeah.
So we've been able to give, jobs to somebody sitting in Shillong is working for Accenture. Those are the kind of connects that were possible because of digital skills. So I think, like I said, we know it's important, but I think when you're pushed against the wall, things transform at a very different pace. And that's what we've seen in the last 2 years.
That's what we have seen. Yeah, thanks, Manisha. And I think I quite like the word nano entrepreneurs. pretty nice word. Yeah. So, Partha, you went away for something. I mean, you forgot something or what? For time being, you went away.
Oh, there was some problem with the internet connection.
Oh, acha, okay. Fantastic. I mean, so Partha, you also run a very good program. I saw your program. It's quite linked to your business. So there is one challenge which we always face while we implement the skill development programs, and that is related to migration. So how do you address this?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and thanks, Amit, for the opportunity. To be very honest, the relationship between migration and skill development is quite a complex one. Migration can be a mean to respond timely and effectively the increased demand of development in the places of origin as well as of destination, transfer and up-to-date skills also. But still migrants face a lot of challenges on the ground, especially in terms of excessive quality training and decent jobs, underutilization of skills, lack of training and opportunities, and often exploitation of the job, especially in the blue-collar sector, I would say. Right. So, to ensure that, a lot of things needs to be done, to correct it. So one can be, migration should be demand oriented. It shouldn't be, they should be migrate, where the skills is in demand, number one. The migrants' rights is to be, protected. It's very important to do so. Third one is that, migrants to integrate into the labor market through access of vocational skill training at their destination, either own villages or towns from where they belong to. And there should be always a steady upskilling program for the existing workforce. However, saying that, that we shouldn't only focus on migration, to provide employment opportunities, and we should always try to focus on skills through which they can be made self-employed at their own locations. And I think especially during the COVID times we realized this a lot. So we used to get a lot of students from UP, Bihar, places like this, and then we realized it's really going to be difficult for them to come to the bigger cities and even to go back. So we are currently focusing a lot on tier 2, tier 3 towns, so that they can be made employable at the place location itself, right? So I think this is the few of the challenges typically we face regarding migration.
Right, Partha, and I think it has to be a dignified migration.
Absolutely.
Sustainability, because I was talking to some of our training partners as well. So वो लोग कहते हैं कि देखिए 15,000 रुपए की नौकरी 3 महीने की ट्रेनिंग के लिए मिलती है, वो तो हम अपने गांव में रह के कमा
Right.
लेंगे. I mean, all these things they have now started coming up, but yes, it has to be a dignified migration. Only then the person who gets the skill training, he or she will be able to stay there for quite a bit of a time. So Anuradha, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
So once you told me, I was looking at the Oracle Academy. I mean, wonderful to see the programs and stuff like that. You know, if you see the unemployment data right now in the country, and you will observe that there is a large section of, you know, people who have finished their graduation, who have finished their post graduation, but they are still unemployed for one reason or the other. So any specific skill enhancement program for this category which you would like to highlight today?
Yeah.
That we can actually, you know, all the partners all the organizations, in fact, who are in the skill development space can also look at towards that section, towards that category.
Yeah. Thanks, Samir. Thanks, CSR Box, for the opportunity, and hello to my co-panelists. So before I say, I would say, start explaining. I would say these are my personal thoughts and not necessarily for the organization I work for or, I had worked for earlier. So when it comes to, and you're very right, Samir, when you said that, and data also shows that more than 80% of the graduates are unemployable. So the area that I have experience in, and I have been able to work through various IT organizations and address the area is majorly from students from standard 10th who have passed standard 10th, and students who are pursuing graduation or are pursuing post graduation. So I would just like to give a brief, background to that the mindset of the student who has done a 10th grade and is, further continuing his education and or has completed his graduation is very, very different from a dropout or somebody who has not done a 10th grade. They are looking for a job which is, either a white collar job or something like, because they feel that they have done the graduation, so they cannot go and do something which is skill based in terms of kind of labor side, or when we say on the unorganized sector side. But the mindset is very different. So that is one challenge. So after graduating, they're looking for jobs in corporates. That's the first mindset challenge. Now, while doing this, the other mindset challenge of the society is that everybody wants academic degrees. So even when even the faculty today who has maybe has done the PhD, but if they are coming and upgrading themselves and we hold some sessions for them, they are looking for certificate. Will we get a certificate of attendance? So getting themselves upgraded comes second. Then the priority is, will we get a certificate for that? So I think these are two very, very prominent challenges: the student mindset and the mindset of the faculty, which actually influences these minds in this particular age. So now, when a student is doing his graduation or his higher education, there are three ways in which he can develop his skills to get into the corporate. One is he, besides his graduation, he goes and does some course or something, outside of that. The second is that the course is available within his educational institutions and he can continue with the course. The third is that the education institution itself is providing that, course to the student through integration of that particular technology curriculum into the overall course structure itself. So when it comes to Oracle, we particularly cater to this part of, the later two parts. So one is we tie up with the educational institutions across India, and these educational institutions can give, our resources to the students